I am a 28-year-old man. My wife is 29, and her boss is 34-year-old man. My wife and I have been together for almost 10 years. We got married almost 5 years ago. We have been through a lot together. We met in college. I took extra classes to catch up so we would graduate together. And we did in 2012. Soon after graduating, I saved some money to study a game design program in Canada, and I invited her to come with me. The easiest way for Canada to let her in was for us to marry. So I proposed, and we got married 3 months after, almost a couple of weeks before starting our new life in Canada. Everything was magical and great for a while since everything was new for us. Slowly, studying started to take over more and more of my time, since the school I enrolled in was very intensive and demanding. I was willing to put all my time and energy into it, since successful completion of the program would determine my chances of landing a job in the industry. This, of course, made her feel lonely and cast aside. This was one of the first challenges we faced together, and they only keep getting tougher and more complicated. This, in a way, tempered us and taught us to communicate better as a couple. It forced us to state our long-term goals as individuals, and it made our differences very clear to work on. So we did. I eventually got a job that I fought so hard for, and things slowly improved, and the relationship went through some ups and downs, but never getting completely unendurable. Just until last year, it was clear that some of our differences as a couple were getting easier to agree upon, but there were some fundamental differences that were always present. So I decided to tolerate until I found myself resenting the amount of emotional work I was subjecting myself into in order to have just a single weekend of not arguing. This eventually made me to feel like I was married to a little sister, trying to tiptoe among eggshells in order to avoid any argument. My libido was completely non-existent, and I was desperately trying to figure out why. This is where the snowball first started rolling down the hill. I couldn't stop looking at her like she was asking for too much out of me, and I could feel myself falling into a vicious circle, turning me away from what I had fought for so long. I just grew more and more resentful towards my decisions. Eventually, I felt completely out of touch and started just cruising with only my work and my hobbies to carry me through the routine. She communicated how lonely she felt, and with whatever energy I had left, I tried to tell her that how maybe this is all temporarily, and that this cycle was particularly dark, but we would eventually rise together and feel better again. Last week, it all felt like diving into ice-cold water when I found out. I saw a text message from her boss flashing on her computer. It was late and she told me that she went dancing with her friends. So this was a red flag. I couldn't help myself, but I clicked on it and opened the conversation. I read so many things I wish I didn't. I could feel my heart sinking and pumping faster and faster as I scrolled down the whole conversation. She was saying how his sister could see him caressing her knee, and eventually I found the message of him confirming sexual contact. Just playing it back in my head makes me nauseous. I wish I knew things were that bad before. After that night, I had a day to myself to think, and I confronted her myself. She confessed everything. Tears were rolling down her face while she was doing so, and I was just stunned. I couldn't show any emotions at that moment. I was very scared and disappointed. I took it all in and gave her two choices. We could end everything right there and then and sort our stuff so we could move away. Or we could put the relationship on standby and keep living together while we figure out what to do, with the condition that she would have to give her 2 weeks notice and quit her job. She decided to try the latter. It's been a week and change, and definitely woke us out of our comfort zone, and things started off getting better for each of us. Seeing her as something I could lose made me want to fight for something that I took for granted, and my libido suddenly returned. I miss looking at her like that, but what happened is completely wrong and conflicting. We have been through so much, and we decided to fight for this for so long. I am convinced that what we used to have was somewhat rare, and I'm willing to fight for it. But fear is always present now, and I'm constantly debating whether I'm making the right decision or not. I feel like just throwing all away is childish, especially now that things have been slowly improving. I told her I can't truly pardon her, but I understand why she felt the way she did. What happened is just a symptom of the state of the relationship, and I will admit that it could have been me in her position when things got dark for me. Where do I draw the line? Am I being idealistic? Is this a pattern that will repeat itself once we find ourselves within our comfort zone and into the valley of our relationship cycle? Update: it's hard to believe that it's been this long already. After reviewing my original post, I can see that a lot of things are clear and defined now, but there is still a lot that hasn't really changed since then. Back then, shortly after everything happened, I took a vacation week and went back to see my parents and sisters. I told them about the situation, and naturally, they were all disappointed. Fortunately though, they were very adamant of respecting any decision I considered the best. After debating it a lot, I concluded that the least we could do is to try to grow out of the circumstances as a couple and see how we felt about it. This, unsurprisingly, was a very idealistic plan. Things just were not that simple. Shortly after my time away, we had to move out of our apartment to a new one for unrelatable reasons, and this was scheduled to happen from before the situation happened. Packing up was just a painful experience. Should we put our things in separate boxes? Or are we going to be practical about it now and figure out what happens later? We moved into the new apartment, and the relationship seemingly froze in time for a couple of months. There were unpacked boxes sitting idle, framed posters that were never hanged. It was impossible to set up our new apartment without knowing exactly if it was going to be our place or not. It was interesting how our relationship accurately mirrored how we felt inside. For me, personally, it was helping me get through the days, just not having to worry about moving forward in that regard. By then, I was very emotionally tired, and I took that chance to pretend like everything was stable for a while. Eventually, we had to move on, get out of the limbo we made. My determination to make things better for us was quickly challenged whenever I saw ourselves as a new marriage. What I originally thought was leftover anger that would eventually go away only solidified and took shape into what I could describe as a demon within me. For example, she would go out with some female friends of hers. Everything was normal until I sent a message to check in with her, and after just 20 minutes of waiting, those negative feelings would grow into a lot of anxiety, anger, and depression. As much as I wanted, I couldn't do anything else. This state replaced every thought in my mind. This experience was so strongly negative. I only had to leave it twice before deciding for good that this plan was not going to work. I sat her down and explained this, and took steps to break down everything she could do to alleviate my anxiety and regain my trust. These conditions, in my perspective, was very reasonable. I was expecting her to message me whenever she arrived or left work, and if she had any plans for the night. The other condition was just to pay attention to her cell phone and calls or messages, since she had a habit of forgetting about it for hours at a time. She wasn't thrilled about this, even after I made it clear it was temporary, and that she needed to regain my trust. I understand why for some reason these conditions could be unacceptable, but if she couldn't do this for me, I felt like we were not both trying equally. This is what I needed to know to move the limbo forward in the opposite direction. Sadly, but for the best, we took the decision to end the relationship. She started looking for apartments to move to shortly after. She eventually confessed that she was still in contact with her old boss. I feel we took the right decision. Last night, she took the last of her things and moved out. We are in good terms. I can't see a friendship between us right now, obviously, but I hope we can reach that point sometime in the future. She gave me her apartment keys, and that was it. I truly wish her the best. I hope she can find the happiness she's looking for. My plan now is just to have fun and enjoy my solitude. There are so many games I want to play and new things I want to learn. Part of me is still scared, but I know it's only about giving it some time. Things will all feel normal eventually, and I'm glad I'll be there to experience it all over again.